video, we started our discussion of red wines, and we got to taste Pinot Noir and Syrah. If you missed that video and would like to view it, please click on the link below. In this video, we're going to complete our discussion of red wines, and we're going to get to taste Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. We're going to start with Cabernet Sauvignon, so a couple notes about that wine. The grape is a dark-skinned grape native to France and grows in Europe, Asia, Australia, South Africa, South America, and Canada, along with the U.S. Outside the U.S., the best Cabernet Sauvignons are produced in the Bordeaux region of France. In the United States, the top three states are California, Washington, and Oregon, with California being the best. However, Cabernet Sauvignon is grown in every state where wine grapes are grown. Well, let's taste our Cabernet Sauvignon. First, that clarity, nice and clear. The brilliance, very nice as well. And those legs, quite nice. The wine I'm going to be tasting is from the Columbia Valley in Washington. It has a nice, deep, dark red color, very typical of Cabernet Sauvignon. Let's swirl our wine and take a sniff. Definitely some cedar. Well, let's try a second sniff. By the way, cedar is the signature aroma of Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's typical of all Cabernet Sauvignons. Blackberries and some chocolate, also very typical. Additionally, you might pick up vanilla or oak or some spices as well. Let's try a taste. Wow, very nice. Plums, damsons, a relative of the plum, some chocolate, definitely some spices, some black tea, also very typical, including things like coffee, and again, mushrooms as well, earthy flavors as well, very typical. The body of this particular Cabernet is a full-bodied wine. Cabernet Sauvignons range in body from medium to full. So moving on to alcohol, this wine is 14.5%, with the ranges for Cabernet Sauvignon being 13 to 16%. Acidity. The acidity of this particular wine is medium. Medium is typical across the board for Cabernet Sauvignons. Sweetness. This is a dry Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Sauvignon is vintage dry. Tannins. The tannins of this wine are fairly high, and range for tannins in Cabernet Sauvignon run from medium to high. Overall balance. This wine is very nicely balanced between the tannins, the acid, the alcohol, and the body. This is a very, very nice Cabernet Sauvignon. I think it has all the typical characteristics, but I think it's a little bit better than a typical Cabernet Sauvignon. Food pairings for this particular wine would be red meats, steak, grilled meats. In addition, for Cabernet Sauvignons, you have meats like game meats, venison, elk, bison, lamb. Chocolate is paired very well, as well as cheeses like aged cheddar, Gouda, and blue cheese. We've completed our discussion of the Cabernet Sauvignon wine. I'm going to take a bite of white bread to cleanse my palate, and we'll evaluate our Merlot. Some notes about Merlot. Again, it's a dark-skinned grape. It's also native to France, and it's grown in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, South America, and the United States. Outside the United States, the best Merlots are also produced in the Bordeaux region of France. In the United States, you have those same three top states, California, Oregon, and Washington, with the best being from California. Again, similar to Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot is grown in many, many states in the United States. Now let's taste our Merlot. Again, that clarity is right there. The brilliance is very nice. And again, we have some real nice legs. The color of our Merlot is a deep dark red. Again, very typical of Merlot. Let's swirl our wine and take a sniff. Again, I had that cedar aroma. Cedar, again, being the signature aroma from Merlot, as well as Cabernet Sauvignon. Let's take a second sniff. Again, very similar. Blackberries. I'm picking up some chocolate, some oak, all very typical of Merlot. Again, you can have those mushrooms, spices as well. Let's take a taste. Again, those dark fruits, plum, damsons, some chocolate, definitely some oak, and some spices. Those are typical of Merlot, including things like coffee, black tea, again, very similar to Cabernet Sauvignon. Body, this is somewhere between medium and full, not quite full, but kind of in the middle. Alcohol, this is again 14.5%, and the range for Merlots is 13 to 15%. The acidity is also medium, very similar to Cabernet Sauvignon. Pretty much across the board, acidity for Merlots is medium. Sweetness, again, this is a dry Merlot, which is pretty much the way all Merlots are vinted, as dry. Tannins, somewhere between medium and high, kind of in the middle as well. I think this is a pretty well balanced Merlot as well. Not quite as high on the tannins, it could be a little higher, but I'm going to call it in balance as well. A little bit better than a typical Merlot, but it has all those characteristics of a Merlot. Food pairings for this particular Merlot, you're going to find very interesting. It's those red meats, grilled meats, steak, along with things like those game meats, elk, bison, venison, lamb, again, chocolate. The cheeses being aged cheddar and Gouda along with blue cheese. Both wines like to be served at 60 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. They both like to be served in a Bordeaux glass. The Cabernet Sauvignon likes to be decanted for about 60 minutes, while Merlot only 30 minutes. You can age the Cabernet Sauvignon up to 25 years, and the Merlot only needs about 20. As you can see from our discussion and my description of both wines, they are extremely similar to one another. It would be hard to tell one from the other if I didn't tell you which one was which. And that's due to one very interesting thing about these two grapes. They are, from a genetic perspective, very, 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 very close cousins. They're grown often side by side in Bordeaux, in California, in eastern Washington. They all grow side by side. There are some distinct differences. Cabernet requires a long, hot, dry summer. It needs a long growing season and likes a fairly mild but a little bit wet winter. On the other hand, Merlot ripens early, so it needs a much shorter growing season and can also handle, I'll use the word harsher, types of weather. There's one last distinct difference between the two. If you go into a wine shop and you buy a Cabernet, any Merlot, of quote, about the same quality, more often than not, Cabernet is going to cost a little more. And that's due to the reputation of Cabernet being, quote, one of the top wine grapes and best wines in the world. Both wines are equally excellent wines, and I would tell you to try both, and even do a taste like this to try to see just how similar they are. Well, we've completed our red wine discussion. I hope you've enjoyed your Cabernet and your Merlot. I really have. In our next video, we're going to take a little bit of a detour from the types of wine, and I'm going to do a video on how to set up and conduct a wine tasting in your home for your friends. And as always, raise a glass and have a drink.